Hello everyone, and welcome to part 3 of this epic tutorial about how to answer the big 30-mark question for long-form TV drama. This is question 3. Let's remind ourselves of the question before we jump in. The differences in the codes and conventions of long-form television dramas reflect the different values, attitudes and beliefs of the audiences that consume them. How far do you agree with this statement? In your previous work, you've put a plan together, you've done your introduction, and you should have done your first paragraph on audiences. So we're sort of halfway through, really. We've identified through the introduction the differences between Netflix and DR, and had a look at the long-form television drama industry as a whole. We've looked at the differences between audiences in our last paragraph, but today we need to sort of broaden out. It's a synoptic question. It is asking you specifically about audiences, but what else of representation, audience, industry, and language could affect the production of Stranger Things? So I think it would be useful at this stage to talk about industry and how the ownership of Netflix and DR differs, and therefore the formats that are presented to us through Stranger Things and The Killing are different as well, and how that might affect the production. So that's what we're going to work on today. Just remember to take your time on these questions, especially the writing bit. You can pause this video as often as you like. Take your time on the writing, make it as good as possible. I've got to say, the stuff that you've produced so far has been excellent, so keep up the good work. So we've got our introduction, which should look something like this. And then we've gone straight into our first paragraph, which is about audience, talking about both Stranger Things and later on The Killing. And today, I'd like us to focus on the next paragraph, the next part, which is industry. So let's have a quick look at this answer. It's not perfect. I'm sure your answers will be far superior to this, but by having a look at something and deconstructing it, you may be able to make your paragraph as perfect as possible. So let's have a quick look. However, it wasn't just the audience that affected the choice of genre, but the ownership structure of the shows. Netflix was able to exploit their multiple hybrid genre mainly due to their vast budget. With 183 million subscribers worldwide paying a minimum of £5.99 a month, it has creative flexibility with its production decisions. In this case, giving creative freedom to the Duffer Brothers, a previously untested pairing using a cast of young, unknown children. So let's break this down, see what's happened here if you ignore this part of the answer just for now. So I've used my comparative connective here, however, and it means that the examiner is directly or being directed towards the fact that we are answering the question, to what extent do you agree? And this, however, answers that part of the question. So it's a good way to start your sentence. However, it wasn't just the audience. So you're creating your argument, you're developing it, and you're evaluating, and therefore you're hitting your assessment objective too, telling your examiner that you've read the question and that you understand that you need to give some sort of argument. You said it's not just the audience, but it's also the ownership structure. So immediately, by talking about industry, you are being synoptic. You're bringing in another key tenet of media by not just focusing on audience, but also talking about industry. And not only that, you've got into specific details. So you know that Netflix has 183 million subscribers worldwide. That's brand new, up-to-date information. Go ahead and Google it yourself to see that pay a minimum of £5.99 a month. Now, that's the minimum that it is in the UK. I'm not expecting you to go out and research every single different subscription channel that Netflix has. It would take too long. And I know that's not necessarily accurate, because I know that if you get Vodafone, for example, you might get 6 months Netflix for free. But it shows that you have done your research. You know how Netflix gets its money. So that specific detail answers AO1. It shows that you know Netflix as an industry, and you know that with that amount of money, the budget is going to be far superior to that budget of The Killing in DR. It also brings in economic context, because it shows your examiner that you understand that Netflix can take a bit of a risk with the Duffer Brothers, and the fact that they don't necessarily need to have these repeated stars, these A-listers, which you would expect with a big budget production to ensure, as David Hesmanhal suggests, to ensure success and to mitigate risk. So essentially what I've done here is I've looked at the argument, looked at the question, I've gone into detail, and I've looked at what that detail is and how it affects the production of the show. So I've tried really hard to keep it focused on the question, because I've said that Netflix has a higher budget and therefore it was able to exploit its multiple genre hybrid. The suggestion there is that a smaller company may not have had the production costs to make such a huge multiple genred production like Stranger Things. So that's why I've put that detail in there. So pause the video now. Your task is to write an industry paragraph on Stranger Things. By all means, take some of the details that I've used here. This is just general knowledge. It's not necessarily my knowledge, and I've put it in to answer this question specifically. So your first part of your industry paragraph will be on Stranger Things, looking at why the ownership structure of Netflix benefited the production of Stranger Things. You don't have to use these details. You can if you want. Pause the video now and see how you get on. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you were successful in making that start with the Stranger Things part of industry. Let's have a look at the next bit then. So, comparatively, DR needed only to appeal to the Danish audience for whom we're paying the license fee. Even with the license fee, DR had to synergize with ZDF, a German public service broadcaster, as they did not have the budget to create The Killing alone. The content of the shows was the priority for DR, who had a smaller audience to appeal to. The Killing is indicative of a media product from a production company who only have the budget to create one major product per year. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what we have done here. I've got in a strange order here, but I've been quite specific here to talk about the Danish audience. Remember, The Killing, produced by DR, only had an audience in Denmark. It only had a native audience. The international success was not guaranteed, and in fact the producers didn't think it would satisfy the needs of a global audience. So the production of The Killing was only for a Danish audience in the first instance, and therefore it just needed to fulfill the desires of the Danish people. Even though we've just said this, we should know from our lessons that DR had to synergize with ZDF. Now, the word synergy or synergize would satisfy AO1 as well. We're using some terminology here. A German PSB, again, that would satisfy AO1. This is stuff that many students won't know, but you do. So put in the information that you think is relevant. The content of the show is the priority for DR, who had a small audience to appeal to. So that's sort of going a little bit further with my explanation here. And again, by talking about DR and talking about the license fee specifically, you are talking about economic context. It shows that you understand how DR gets its money. The final sentence here is important. The Killing is indicative of a media product from a production company who only have the budget to create one major product per year. Now, the reason I've put that in there is because it's very different to Netflix. How many hours of your life have you wasted watching rubbish Netflix programs? Because they have the budget to try things. DR do not. DR had to have a successful production with The Killing, and that's what they did. But the reason why I've put this information in here is because it accelerates my argument. Why have I talked about DR and the fact that it's a PSB? Well, because with a PSB budget, a smaller budget, it has to appeal to the audience that pays the bills. So that's why I put it in here. So I've hit AO1, I've increased my knowledge and put some terminology in here. I've talked about economic context, and I've accelerated my argument as well. Can you do the same thing? Can you write the second part of this paragraph about DR and The Killing? Pause the video and do that now. Good. So hopefully that's the first bit done and dusted. Now you're probably thinking, okay, that's all good and well, but there's a lot more that I know about the industry. There's not a lot more I know about Netflix and DR, which I could put in. Why don't we do that now? Okay, let's give it a shot. So I'm going to develop my argument even further now by talking about how the shows were made, the format of the shows. So the format of the shows also reflect the attitude of their prospective audiences. Stranger Things Series 1 contained 8 60-minute episodes and adhered to Netflix tried and trusted bingeability formula, preferred by millennials and Generation Z customers, the core of Netflix's demographic. Okay, let's have a quick look at this. It's specific industry information. Unless you knew your stuff, you would not know that season 1 contained 8 60-minute episodes. You have done your homework. You're showing the examiner that you know this episode and this industry inside out. You also know that the bingeability nature of Netflix is very much part of Netflix USP. They don't have a time lag. They don't have shows released every week. They put it all at the same time so that people can binge it. And that certainly appeals to the millennial and generation customers, the core of Netflix demographics. We know from our demographic study that the majority of Netflix customers are below the age of 55. So that fits with what we know. And this goes back and answers the question then. The question is about audience. Well, we've talked about the audiences here, millennials and Generation Z customers. Now, if you wanted to do something different and you wanted to say that they are aspirers or explorers using the psychometric profiling that you've studied, go ahead and do that. This is just an example. You can put your own twist on this. Pause the video here and talk about the format of Stranger Things and how that is useful when thinking about the audience that they're trying to hit. And how about The Killing? Well, The Killing, conversely, had 20 50-minute episodes in season 1, each representing 24 hours in the case of Nana Birk Larsen, and was shown weekly in Denmark and as double bills in the UK. This different format appealed to the older target audience of The Killing and fit perfectly with the ABC One audience of BBC 4. Remember, it was sold to the BBC on BBC 4. We know that they tend to be an ABC One older, educated audience, and certainly a different profile to the profile of the Stranger Things audience. So what have we done here? Very similar. We've really focused on the questions. So all this information that I've given previously, the reason why I've talked about it is because the format appealed to the older target audience. I'm constantly going back and answering the question, and I'm developing the overall argument. This information here is specific to the shows. It's specific to the industry. I'm hitting my AO1 targets. So if you think about this paragraph, I'm rocking backwards and forwards between detail and then the explanation of the detail. Detail and the explanation of the detail. If you're going to put something in, you have to explain why you are putting it in. Okay, that's enough of me talking. Over to you. Fill in the last bit of this paragraph, which is about The Killing's format, the fact that it's 50-minute episodes and there's 20 of them all together shown in a weekly format as opposed to thrown on to a streaming service all at the same time. I'm going to leave this with you now. It's quite it's essentially one paragraph, but I've spread it over 2 slides here. Obviously go back and think about what I've done and put your own information in there yourself. The next lesson is going to be, as you can see, on representation and cultural contexts, and the conclusion, you'll be pleased to know. So there's only one more part to go with this. You've shown incredible determination to get up to this stage so far. Thank you for listening to my monotonous voice. Hopefully it's been useful. Pause the video here, crack on, email it to your teachers or add to your blog posts. Any questions, let me know. Good luck.